Hello my wonderful people, you guys are welcome to my YouTube channel. Happy Sunday to you all. My wonderful people, I say you don't shake gbegbe for here. Oh, one that they say it shall never end. Africa can never change. This person now wey just dey carry this casket, just dey run up and down, so e no wan go house. So he say he wan carry them go the person wey kill am where the house dey. Now so they carry them, they run up and down for village until e come finally locate the place. Una dey see am, my people. They say they don go find out, so say na true spiritual na people take kpai am o, and they no even know who kpai am. The day of the burial now, the body don vex. He say he must carry them go show them the place. Now so the 6 people wey carry the casket now don begin dey carry them, dey run. The one must go show them. My people, if today is your first time coming across my channel, please subscribe, like, and put on your notification bell so that whenever I upload a video, you will be first to be notified. As for my subscribers, may God bless you all. As you continue to watch my video, you will never lack. You will prosper, and happy Sunday to you all. My wonderful people, no be small thing o. Now like this person wey don kpai begin dey carry casket, e direct them go one of the person house for village o. Now they come say wetin dey happen. And anybody wey kpai like that now, family member sef involved too o. They come carry, e come direct them go one place for village. They reach there now, they come find out say na one woman for there, e get hand. Say anytime wey dead body wey kpai do like that, they go know say something dey wrong, say na the person get hand inside. And this one now, e just dey carry them go the first place, the second place. Na so they dey run up and down o. Before you know, e carry them go e family house. They come dey go, then they come say na the house of the person na him be this one. Na how come? My people, they come find out say and the brother and the family na him dey the house. Now one of them still get hand there, nobody know. Abeg more na watch, more na live una so.
Fatigue and complained about feeling off, but he could not just pinpoint what was wrong with him. Even after visiting the hospital in Abidjan multiple times and running multiple tests, nothing was found. The doctor said, as far as they were concerned, latestmay was fine and healthy, and nothing unusual was wrong with him. However, a few weeks later, early of September of that same year, 2014, latestmay died from the strange illness that his family said they could not understand nor could they explain. And this was where it became odd, which led a lot of people to believe that since the doctors could not identify what was wrong with him, and since no one understood what kind of sickness this man was passing through before he died, it was most likely he was killed spiritually by someone who was pretty much envious of him or just wanted him out of the way. Some of the words used was that latestmay was killed by witches and wizards. But then there was no way to know, or was there? Because all that was left to do was to bury latestmay. And that was what was going to be done. Except on the day of the burial, things took a different turn. It was almost like latestmay was in his casket saying, if I'm going down, I'm taking 2 people down with me. On the 20th of September that same year in 2014, his burial was held in his village, in his hometown, Kosro, in Côte d'Ivoire. It was said he was first taken to the church where a mass was performed for his funeral. And after the mass was performed, the casket bearers picked him up as they headed for the cemetery. The only problem is, once they moved out of the church, the casket bearers froze. They could not move any longer. In the presence of everyone else, they began spinning 360 with the casket. And soon, in uniform, every 6 persons carrying the casket were moved and directed to a particular location by the casket. It was said the casket led them to the first house, where it spiritually, forcefully struck the door and windows of the house, which indicated to the crowd of onlookers that that is the home of the person that had a hand in his death. And at this point, everyone was surprised and shouting and realizing that, oh wow, the casket has finally identified one of his killers. Pretty much the late latestmay identifying one of his killers. And everyone was cheering, everyone was surprised, everyone was wowed. But the ironic thing about this is that the house that the casket was identifying was latestmay's house. This is the home of the deceased. This is a house of the person in the casket. So why is the casket leading the casket bearers to his own house in order to identify his killers? Is he trying to say that he did it himself? But the thing is, it was said that Esme lived in Abidjan with his own immediate family. However, the house where he was pointing out was his family house where he grew up, or where he was born, in the village. And that house, since he was dead, was now fully controlled by his younger brother, or maybe his older brother, but it was said it was his brother who was in the house, which made people believe that since the casket is leading them to that house, therefore the killer of Esme lived in that house, and the caretaker and owner of the house at that time was Esme's brother. Afterwards, the casket led them to the house of another woman, an older woman in her 60s, indicating that she too had a hand in his death, pretty much assuming that the woman and Esme's brother both played a role in killing him. And given the circumstances and the mystery surrounding the health of Esme before he passed, they assumed that these two people, Esme's brother and the old woman, were the witch and wizard that killed him. But the problem is, as intriguing and weird and bizarre as this scenario looks, as questionable as it may seem, now that people who believe in it have agreed that the casket has indeed directed them to the home of the killers, what then would happen? How would you prove this in court? Are you going to arrest these two people and take them to court and say, all right, the casket led them to their house, so therefore they should be sentenced to prison? Well, such phenomenon cannot hold in the court of law. However, what follows next is pretty much the dark part of this practice. It's pretty much the sad part and the darkness behind this practice of the flying casket. Because it was said Esme's brother and the elderly woman were killed illegally after they were identified by the casket. It may have been the crowd of onlookers who engaged in some form of jungle justice on them, but in the end, the two of them lost their lives because people believed that they were the ones who killed the victim in the casket. It was later said police started searching for people behind this because that was not the way. A lot of people started frowning against the flying casket method, calling it an excuse for witch hunting and an unfair pass to commit jungle justice. But then what is this phenomenon? Is it really true? Did Esme's casket really direct these people to the house of his killers? Were the casket bearers being moved by some spiritual force? Or were they the ones moving the caskets to these homes because they thought that these were the killers? There was an argument that claimed that these casket bearers took some form of medication, some form of drugs, some form of juju in order for them to prepare for what was coming in that ritual or practice of trying to make the casket find its killers. And it kind of made them feel like maybe these casket bearers were the ones doing most of the movement and that it had nothing to do with the casket. In fact, a lot of people challenged this practice, saying they should drop the casket on the floor and let the casket itself move to the home of the person that killed him. That would be the only way they would believe. And I hate to say this, but I think that works for me too. Apparently, the flying casket is not just limited to one part of Africa. There have been cases like this in Nigeria, but for Nigeria, it's usually mostly the casket not being able to move past a certain point. That is as far as I know, but as far as flying casket in Nigeria is concerned, I've never seen it happen. I've never heard of it. The same thing with Ghana. I've never necessarily heard of it, but for Ghana, they have their own strange casket practice that maybe in another video we'll talk about. So stay subscribed for that one. But for Nigeria, the flying casket is not so much of a practice. What I know is that if a victim is not satisfied with death or a deceased person doesn't want to get buried, the car or the ambulance usually breaks down along the way, or, the casket bearers can't move past a certain point because, that is where they feel something is off. But in Zambia and in Zimbabwe, somehow, this is also a thing. In 2022, another case of flying casket happened, or pretty much began circulating around the internet from Luano district in Zambia. It was said that it was the casket of a 52-year-old woman by the name of Maggie who passed under mysterious circumstances. And when it was time for her to be buried, it was said she kept leading the casket bearers to another direction away from the cemetery. There were words that the cars that tried to transport her body to the cemetery broke down. And when they hired another vehicle, that one also broke down. And when they called the third vehicle, that one could not even make it because on the way, it broke down. And when the casket bearers tried to carry the casket themselves to the cemetery, they could not. And there were claims that the casket led them around the village and headed straight to the home of her suspected killers, who they claimed or said happened to be her in-laws. There was yet another flying coffin case in 2023, still in Zambia, Mumbwa district, where it was said another woman died and her body refused to get buried, leading them to the home of her killers. But the wonder had happened in Luano district, from what was said that the body for 4 days refused to get buried. That every single time they tried to take it out of the home of the suspected killers, it would not leave. The first day, second day, and third day, they even had to hire different casket bearers to find a way to get this body to the cemetery. But they could not. The body kept leading them to the home of the killers or the alleged killers, and the casket was mostly left in their house for over 2 to 3 days. It even got up to the 4th day from sources, and the government had to intervene. The suspects in the house were not exactly lynched or beaten, although they were held and accused. But eventually, the police got involved, and the suspected in-laws believed to have killed this woman were taken to the police custody for their protection, and not because the flying casket justified that they were the killers or the murderers. There was a similar case in Zimbabwe, but for Zimbabwe's own, it was a body that refused to get buried, and so it was dropped close to the home of his alleged killers. And it's not like it was a flying casket just moving. It just led the casket bearers, they dropped it there. They did not really have that energy to go back and forth like we see in the other countries where the casket bearers are made and forced to move in the heaviness of the casket, in the weight of the casket. Despite being tired, despite being sweaty, despite being hydrated, they are being moved tirelessly, just getting to the home of the killer.
Oh, this code is heavy. Hurry up, let's drop this coffin. It refuses to move. What do you mean it refuses to move? I said it refuses to move. Do you think I enjoy carrying this thing? Jesus Christ, I'm stuck. I can't move. Don't be ridiculous.
And like we've already talked about, in other countries, it's probably happened. I'm sure it happens in Sierra Leone. There's been a video that happened in Sierra Leone a long time. I'd seen that a while back. In Ghana, most times it's nearly similar to that of Nigeria, where the casket refuses to get buried. And for Nigeria, certain sacrifices has to be made. But for Ghana, from what I see in a lot of their videos, which is very ambiguous, the people force the casket to the cemetery regardless of whether the casket refuses to get buried or not. I've seen videos of the casket being forced and dragged. Even before they get to the cemetery, the casket is already damaged, but it's still being buried. So I'm sure there are deeper meanings to these practices, and maybe if I know more, I would share more. I really just wanted to talk about the flying casket phenomenon and how a lot of people use it as a way to find killers and probably have them lynched or killed. But let's talk about your thoughts. What do you think about this flying casket? Do you believe it's real, or do you think there's something fishy about it? Do you think the dead is really leading these casket bearers to the home of the killers? Or do you think it's the casket bearers that are just acting on their own accord? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And turn on notification button so should there be any future updates, you'll be the first to get notified. Thank you for watching.